So we're recording the session. And just to say thanks, Rossie, for doing the session for us. And thanks to everybody for joining as well. There's been a lot of interest in this session. And I was just thinking, I think it's about 3 years ago since you did a session for us for Cool Scotland. And just looking, as you've been sort of moving through the comics, I'm thinking, blimey, it's so much more colourful and engaging from what I remember. So you've obviously come on leaps and bounds with comics. They look fantastic.
Very much. Yeah, I think back then I only had 2 comics available, and since then we've released another 10 on top of that, cross extra material.
Okay, so I'll just hand over to you then, Rossie. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So if we spend about 20 minutes and then we'll take questions at the end. Okay. Cheers.
So thanks. Around 4:20, aim for. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry you don't get to see my face, and that might be a good thing. But yes, what I hope you're seeing right now is the screen of our website. Now, this website may not have even been around the last time I was doing a talk for Atlas in the webinar, but it's been our website since late 2018, and it's been serving us well ever since. And I'm going to be taking you through a tour of it because it's basically going to show you everything Dekko Comics can be as a resource for you, for the school context, from a parent context, giving resources to their children, and also as something to be used by the pupil. So just as a quick reminder from what Dekko Comics is and my story, and if you're ever using the website, you can actually find that out here. If you go to the About page, you can find out about the team, the characters, find examples of the work, etc. If you go to What's Dekko, it gives you a whole load of things that you can do to find about us. But I'll give you the lowdown here. I was dyslexic. I am dyslexic, and I struggled at school throughout all my life. And I particularly struggled with reading and understanding information through words. Listening in class was really difficult. Reading words in class was really difficult, and it just didn't seem to get her. And even though I got extra time in exams when it came to secondary school, and even though I had all this kind of extra support, and I had, I was very grateful for it all, none of it seemed to be making a difference. When it came to revision, I was working into the night. I was working on the weekends as well. I had friends who I knew who weren't doing this, and yet almost by default they were getting A's and B's, and I was still really struggling with C's and D's. And it really got to me. It was really frustrating when I knew I was putting in the effort, and yet I wasn't getting the results for that effort. I was good at art and drama and creative writing, but all those weren't considered particularly intelligent subjects, certainly not in my time, and they, and they weren't the grades that seem to matter most to your career. So eventually when I got to 5th year, after looking back to my primary school years and secondary school years, I just realized I'm so fed up with that. I don't want to go through another exam where I work really hard and put in all this effort just to feel stupid again, just to get another poor grade, another bad result, another very unrewarding result. So I basically just thought to myself, if I'm going to fail anyway, I might as well enjoy it. And that's when I just decided to think about things that I was good at and things that I liked. I knew I was good at art, and I knew that I was good at creative writing and comics, and I always loved reading comics, and it was never a problem to read from a comic. So I just turned a bunch of my revision notes into comic strips, and as soon as I started doing this, it was not only more fun to revise this way, but it was really fun to read the information through using story and narrative and pictures and all these different things. It made it so much easier for it to stay in because I had visuals and story to remember all the points by. There was a lot more sensory stuff going on than just the words, and basically, long story short, I ended up getting an A. That was my first grade A I'd ever gotten in an academic exam. And I'd gone into that exam thinking I was going to fail, but I didn't care because for the first time I had enjoyed my revision. And by enjoying my revision, I'd ended up getting a better grade. So that was very special to me. And that's basically what led on to make Dekko Comics. But enough about that. That's all online. You can find that. We've done TEDx talks about that and been on TV. So you can find that stuff online if you want to find out more about the story behind Dekko. But to go into the comics themselves, since the coronavirus period, we have actually uploaded all 12 of our Dekko Comics issues online. And we've made it all free to help with the coronavirus period so that it can basically be as useful a resource as possible during this difficult time. And that's a lot of material. That's over 140 educational stories, because there's 12 comic stories, 2 pages each per Dekko comic issue. And also this coronavirus period has given us a good opportunity to be with how we navigate the comics and how we utilize these more as a resource rather than just fun and helpful reading. For example, a problem with the comics was because we wanted to make them a comic first and entertaining first before educational, because that's the power of what the comics do. They break down motivational barriers and they give more than just words to learn the information with. So because in the old comic format, we had to try and keep them, we didn't have page numbers, we didn't have anything to sort of make it useful as a textbook would be in how the contents are laid out and so on. This has allowed us to be a bit more, allowed us to cater it a bit more towards teaching needs and school use and that sort of stuff, rather than the impracticality of buying loads of comic issues and using them in a class where everyone's got to find the right page and so on. So I'll show you a bit more of that in a minute, but first of all, I'm just going to show you an example of a comic. So here on the website, we've gone to comics and read online, and you can go down here, and here's the most basic way to find a comic. You can click on one of the issues, and I'll show you a better way of finding comics in a second, but as an example, you might go to maths, and you might be running a lesson about telling the time, or you might have people who are struggling with telling the time. So you can come here and click on this button, and when it loads, there we go. Then you have a little 2-page comic there, all about telling the time. And this is a little story about one of our characters, who's a little robot. It's basically a story. It's a comic before education. And it's a story about this robot trying to beat a bad guy who's stolen a lot of money, but he has to beat his bodyguards. And all of them have a clock on them and are telling a different sort of time. And Timbot, the character, he tries to fight them at first, to no avail. And it looks like we don't know how he's going to beat them. Then suddenly, by accident, his friend says, "Look out, Timbot! Here comes the 2:30 one." And when he says that, you can see 2:30 is written on the chest and on the belt. And suddenly it explodes. And it turns out in the story that that's their self-destruction code. By saying what time it is on their chest and their belt, it makes them blow up, which was a mistake from the bad guy's design. So by doing that, we see in the story how he just starts telling the time to make them explode. And here he thinks he's got it. He thinks he's nailed it. So he says 45 minutes past 6 for this one. But of course, that's not the right terminology, so the robot doesn't blow up. And then his friend points out that, what do you call the time after 30:30? And he says, "Oh yes, 7:15." And then the robot blows up. So it's just a fun little story about a robot fight that actually ends up teaching a lot of terms to do with time, and helps get into children's head what different times mean, both on the 24-hour clock and in relation to, the 24-hour clock down here, and in relation to the 12-hour clock. And sometimes the comics come with a bonus poster as well, like here, where you can, it gives a little extra lesson towards understanding one of the themes of that lesson. So for example, this is all about understanding the 24-hour clock, hours and minutes. So that's just an example. And then you can go back to maths if you want to find the next one of that issue. You can go to the fractions and decimals one, and so on and so forth. Another 2-page comic. This one doesn't have a poster, but you get the idea. You can go back to the home issue. And like I say, this was just one way in which to use it. And you've got, each issue covers a variety of subjects. All of them cover 3 math subjects and 3 English subjects. And they also cover a variety of other ones, like some cover language and physics, biology, history, and there's always a puzzle section as well. For each issue, there's a few puzzles to test the children on what they've learned in that particular issue. So you've got, a little word search here to do with facts, and you've got a little spot the differences for the history lesson here. So there's activities as well. It's not just the comic stories. Now, if you want to give it to someone to read just as a normal comic, like the original comic format, that's when you can go here and all the comics are just in their normal order, and you can read that at your leisure. But now, as I was saying about the sort of teaching navigation side, how we've made that easier. So back in the past, that's all you would have. You would just have the comic issue, and you would read whatever comics were in there and find them on your own initiative. Well, now with the online website, we have a topic guide. And this is the part that's going to be very useful to you. So if you're a teacher and you're wanting to teach a particular topic or a particular subject, this basically takes you to, you don't need to find the right issue for it. You basically click on whichever subject you want: maths, English, science, geography, history, etc. And all these subjects are for ages 9 to 12 or 8 to 14 at a stretch. We basically recommend these for primary 5 to primary 7, or even first year at secondary school. Primary 4 can be, like the time one's quite relevant to that, but generally they tend to be primary 5 to 7. Or in England, it's key stage 2, KS2. But yeah, so for example, I've gone to the English one here. I'll just show you that again. If you want to choose an English subject or topic, you can go here, and it's got all the different topics that we cover. It covers the key stage 2 curriculum, and we've kept it relevant for Scotland as well. It covers it quite comfortably. It doesn't cover every single detail, but it covers most of the big subjects. You see, you've got commas, apostrophes, hyphens, dashes, and brackets, sentences, adjectives, conjunctions, nouns, noun phrases, and so on. So, and if you want to click on any of those, it'll take you to one. Let's go to verbs and nouns, for example, and it'll take you straight to the comic, which is located in issue 5, which is about verbs and nouns. And it's a funny story about a spider trying to catch a fly using verbs and nouns. So there you've got, it's highlighting the nouns in the sentence, and it's highlighting the verbs in a different color. I'll talk to you a little bit about why these comics are particularly useful for visual learners and different kinds of thinkers and all that stuff, particularly the kids who might struggle with the more conventional means at school. But yeah, just to finish on the navigational guide here, as I was saying earlier, maths and English are pretty much covered for the Key Stage 2 curriculum. You'll find most, if not all, of the main subjects covered here. Pretty much for science as well. If you click on the science one, it splits up to chemistry, biology, and physics for you. You go in there, and there's about between 9 and 12 topics of each one in there for you to find. So it's very useful. It's so much easier to use in a school context now than they were before. They can still be used for fun reading or reading encouragement, but they can be used as part of a lesson a lot more effectively now. And it gives you some advice and information of how these comics have been used in schools to help give you some ideas. For example, they can be quizzed on it. It can be given the material to read at home, of course. It can be read interactively. So if you're having a Zoom call with the class, you can have different ones play different characters and so on. That can be quite fun. But whether you give it to pupils individually to read or you read it as a group activity, there's lots of things you can do. And these are just some of the suggestions. And yes, of course, we have in the topic guide the puzzle section as well. So that can take you to all the puzzles and activities. Now, usually these are more useful when you're choosing the comic by issue, because each puzzle page relates to the topics covered in that issue. But it doesn't need to be that way. You can always just try out these puzzle pages, find if there's anything that's useful to you in them. For example, this one talks about the ocean environment. It's a geography lesson. It's about plastics and oil in the sea and how it can damage. You've got this one teaching synonyms and antonyms. So, you know, there's still, you can still navigate the puzzles that way if you wish to. And yeah, so that's all laid out for you as clear as it could be. I'll just take you back to the main Read Online Hub before we quickly move on. Yeah, it's got other sections here where if you're interested in getting more of the hard copies, if you want to download the app, if you want to find out more to do with how these comics can be used for schools and libraries, and we've got sections for all of those. I'm just going to quickly show you the characters, just to give you an idea of like the vibe of our comic. We truly believe in being as entertaining as possible, and having wacky, we use wacky humor a lot to teach as well, you know, really Looney Tunes like humor and really daft stuff. We can cover serious stuff as well, in a serious way, but generally we try and keep it all lighthearted and super easy and fun and non-complicated to read. So there's a complete mix of characters, but it's pretty much always wacky. You've got, these two are kind of like our main mascots at the moment, but you've also got a sort of depressed tree, a constipated tadpole, this guy who's teaches a lot of biology lessons because his stories are all about the battles going on inside his body when he's sick. You've got Detective Duke, that's quite an interactive one where the readers have to figure out a mystery. These two are very popular. The Doctopus, their stories are all about trying to cure ailments of fish and stuff. And so there's quite a lot of characters, and you can have a look through just to get an idea of the vibe of the comic. It's very silly, but there's also a lot of relatability, a lot of fun characters. Yeah, and it's just maybe quite interesting to see as reference. The app we only have for iOS at the moment. Apologies for anyone wanting to use this on devices, and it only works for iPhones and iPads. We are trying to get it on Android, but Google Play are being quite annoying with their rules and regulations, so we're just trying to work our way through that. And here's something I wanted to show you quite quickly. Usability is a quick way to get to Teacher's Guide, the topic guide I was showing you before, or Activities, the puzzle page. But here's a page that, if you're ever wondering why or how these are particularly useful for example, dyslexic students. It's not just dyslexic students, it's people with autism, ADHD, any kind of part that would make it any kind of impediment or difficulty with learning the conventional means. These comics have proven to be quite helpful for, including deaf students, actually. But it just gives you this it highlights the reasons why these are useful. So, for example, we use a dyslexic-friendly font. We use color coding to color code the different facts. People use this in their revision notes all the time, but we've already done it in the comics. We use keywords and phrases. We highlight those. So whenever we've color coded a fact, we leave the character dialogue black and white, but with the facts, we color that and sometimes even underline it. And you'll see at the bottom of the pages, in most of the comics, not all of them, but in most of them, you'll see the color-coded fact there, so that when they're remembering what did they learn from that comic, they remember to refer back to those keywords, and that helps. It serves as a nice memory landmark for them. I should say as well, but if you're really wanting the kid to learn if you're really wanting a student to learn the content from the comic off by heart, do encourage them to read it more than once. If they read it 3 to 4 times, this happened in our tests, they will remember the content very well, even if it's 3 or 4 times over a week. And that's how it worked for my revision period, and that's how you remember the content the best. But at the very, very least, even with one read, they will certainly have a good time enjoying it. They will certainly read it for fun. We've got a big reviews page up here that will tell you just how many dyslexic readers have loved the comics and continue to do so. So at the very least, you'll get a brilliant read out of it, but it can be used as much or as little as you need it for. We also use speech bubbles that helps differentiate the information and cut it up a bit. It cuts it into chunks. Similarly does the panels and boxes. Panels naturally, like the comic format, is very useful for communicating information because you cannot have too many words in the speech bubble by definition of the medium. So you're forced to only have so much information in per speech bubble and per panel, which makes it nice and clear and much easier for someone to follow. When you think about children with dyslexia, what they really struggle with is too much text at once. They will often see the text before they read the text, and it will become overwhelming to them. So this automatically cuts it down and allows the visual to dominate. And many people with dyslexia will be a lot more attuned to visuals before words. Which isn't to say they can't get better with words, but this is a great way to help them get better with words. It's how I got better with my reading in the first instance. So it's very useful by its natural comic nature. And it uses visuals, of course, and it uses the visuals to teach. It doesn't just use visuals per se, but the visuals are often doing as much teaching as the words. For example, we have Mr. Metaphor here. He listens to you with a wooden face. He speaks to you with cotton candy words. He has an ear-piercing scream. An ear-piercing scream is music to his ears. All of those are metaphors, and you can see those metaphors happening before you. And it's daft, but it's also very memorable. And of course, we've color-coded that as well. And that's an example. And we also use storytelling, of course. Storytelling, remembering the points of the story. If you think about film that really made an impression of you, or a film you've watched more than once, you can actually remember the points of the story and the things that happen. And we use that as a teaching device because it's proven very useful and very helpful. When people are telling parables or they're giving analogies, they will use story to help communicate something or make something memorable. Advertisement uses that all the time. They also use visuals, and they also make things fun and funny, which is another tool that Dekko Comics uses. We make all our content fun and funny if we can, because that humor can also serve as a memory device. And also for the big problem with dyslexia, speaking to someone with dyslexia and someone who's worked in this field for the past 4 years, self-esteem is the biggest issue, and feeling down about yourself whenever you feel you can't access your work properly. So by making it fun and funny and giving them really positive vibes, it really makes it a lot easier to read. And of course, it's made by a dyslexic author, ding ding, and the readers are very happy and they've enjoyed reading it, and we have it in first-hand information, and apparently it is very much helping them as well. We've had one girl at least has reported directly to us that she used them for her test, and to great effect. So they are being used, they are being well enjoyed, and they are producing wonderful results, and I'm very happy about that. And there's more dyslexic support, of course, as well. We have the app and so on and so forth. And you can get the hard copies too if you wish. We will release hard copy versions of the maths and English compilations of the comic at some point, but right now the online version just serves just as strong a purpose with that. So I think I've covered everything I need to with that. When you're ever using this website yourself, I hope it's all nice and easy for you to find. You can contact us easily as well. You can find out the reviews, but I'm happy to open the platform now to any questions you have about the content or how it came to be, or anything about using the content. Any questions you have at all.
Oh, thank you. That's good, thanks. I was an avid comic reader when I was young, but there was never anything in the curriculum, so this is a fantastic resource, thank you. And Robert's just saying that the webinar will be available as an archive, so that's great. And Paul, who's the director at Full Scotland, has also just popped in the chat box some very positive feedback that we've had, and some sort of feedback from teachers as well. So if you do have any questions you'd like to ask Rossie, please pop them into the chat box below, and I'll make sure do our best to answer them.
Craig, do you want me to turn back to my video, or do you want me to share screen?
Yeah, let's go back to your video. That's of course, it might be easier to go back to your screen if someone asks a question.
That's a good point. Screen.
Yeah, so if you have a question or a comment for Rossie, please just pop it into the chat pane. And if you haven't found the chat pane yet, it's on the bottom right-hand side. There's a purple bar called a Collaborate panel, and it's just click on the bar, and it's just the first icon that you see. No questions? You're writing more? Hope so.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
Are you writing more comics?
Oh, am I writing more? Yes, actually, I do have plans in the very near future to start releasing some new material. We won't return so soon to the original format of releasing one a month, because they're 36 pages long and they take a lot of time and money to do. So we'll return to that model when we're a bit of a bigger business, but we will be making some more content. Sure, I can't give you an exact date, but the plans are to get it out very soon, even if it's just a small amount.
Okay, thanks. Michelle's asking, do the characters stay consistent across topics?
Yes, they do, and the reason for that is because we want, even if a child comes across a subject that they think, oh, I hate that subject, but maybe they like the character and they think, oh, but I like that one. Yeah, I'll read this. So yeah, and it's also just nice because you get a sense of identity with the comic when you remember who the characters are and you recognize the characters, and it sort of creates a nice consistency for the comic. So yeah, we do. It's the same as the Beano.
Yeah, Paul's asking, have you had any feedback from parents and learners who are maybe using the comics at home just now?
Yes, we have actually. I don't have it right now in front of me, but basically we have had parents saying that, yeah, we're using these comics right now. They're really helping with the maths or the literacy, or my dyslexic daughter just loves reading this way. I'm just taking up sound bites of things that we have had since the lockdown period, but yeah, good feedback has come our way. The website viewership has gone up, and it's still stayed pretty high each day, which means people are going back and reading it and using it again, which is really good. I'm sorry I don't have the most recent feedback here to hand, but here in the reviews page, we've got sort of a compilation of some examples of it. So, you know, that one was from a girl who we did the tests with, and she says, I enjoyed it a lot. It was really funny. I would definitely do my work this way. It was really easy because it was enjoyable, and when it's enjoyable, it is easy for me, and I know more of the subjects after reading comics.
Great feedback. Donna's asking, can parents access the comics with children at home?
Can parents access the comics? Absolutely. This is currently, it's just free and available to everyone, both to parents, teachers alike. So if you're on a call with a student or a parent, for example, you can basically get them to look at the same thing, just tell them where to go. It's also pretty easy to find. But yes, parents can use it, kids can use it, teachers can use it. All you need is an internet connection.
Okay, great. Rashida's saying that the comics look really good, and she can see them being used for a couple of pupils. Alex is asking, what's the price and the app? Well, you've kind of mentioned about how they're easy to access. But can you also maybe discuss the difference in the app compared to the comic?
Absolutely. No pun intended. Well, I'll answer the question about was there a question about prices before then?
Yeah, with the price for the app and the comic per issue.
Okay, so just relating to the app, very, very quickly, if you're interested in getting these as a school, there's a schools and library section, and if you order them in bulk, you basically get a big discount per comic. So if you're wondering about prices for schools, and there's that. Also, if you order them individually as hard copies, you get a discount per comic there. But for the app, they're all free on the app right now as well. They did used to cost money. They were just a little bit cheaper than the hardbacks, but right now that's all free. And the difference with the app is that it allows you, if I've got a little screenshot here, it allows you to use a couple of extra functions. You can use a colored filter overlay if you're a certain kind of dyslexic reader who really benefits from colored overlay. It allows you to choose which color and choose the intensity of it as well. You can also grayscale it if you have visual stress and you prefer a black and white thing. But it also allows you to look up the comics by character, to favorite them, and also it has this little panel navigation function which allows you to zoom into the panels one by one. So if you're a kind of dyslexic reader or kind of any reader who just who finds all the comic page panels at once quite overwhelming, the app will allow you to just go into one panel at a time and go at an easy pace.
Okay, thank you. Margaret's asking, do you produce editable comics for teachers to amend for individual children?
I would absolutely love to do that. That's going to cost time and money. So it's definitely on the list. It's on the list. Like with the app, there's so many functions we want to add. We want to add an ability, for example, where you can adjust how many words are in the speech bubbles, have an easy read, a medium read, and a full read, so that kids who are 8 years old but have a reading level of 4, they can go to easy read, and that means they can read content that is their age, but an amount of words that suits their level and work their way up. I hope that makes sense. But yes, another thing we'd like to add to that is allowing teachers to make footnotes or add bits in and all that stuff. We're just still too young at this stage, and we're fully independent. So,
okay. Do you get any requests, Rossie, for text to speech? I mean, most people are able to do that on comics, but do you ever get, so that you can have them read aloud? So,
oh, sorry, could you repeat that question, please?
Yeah, do you get many requests for having sort of text to speech so that the comics can be read aloud, by like a sort of computer voice or a narrated voice?
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, we wanted that in our future app as well. We'd love actually less than the computer voice, but we'd actually like to have someone read over the character voices in an ideal world. But no, currently we don't have a format that allows someone to highlight the text and have the computer read it. But it is something to look into. We're just discovering that the app and technology world is an expensive and complicated one, and it takes lots of time. So we will do that, but right now it's just early days.
Okay, and probably one last question from Kim. Do you do any comics for secondary school age children? I think some of them were there, were they?
Well, they're relevant for the first year of secondary school, and particularly good as refresher material as well. Like we still have older kids using these. In fact, you can see in our reviews, a tutor at Glasgow University recommended them as refresher material for even student level. Let's see if he's there. There you go, senior lecturer in English literature. He recommended them for that. But they, yeah, right now it's mainly just like for reminding yourself or going over some of the basics that maybe you didn't quite pick up on at school. We definitely want to bring them out for secondary school ages. That's when I made this comic discovery for myself, was in secondary school. But we just decided to start it off at a younger age. One, because ages 9 to 12 is roughly when you start to develop your relationship with learning, and if you have dyslexia, so on. But also because comics are easier. Kids around that age will give comics more of a chance at that stage, whereas older kids will be a bit more self-conscious of what they read. So that is definitely coming in the future, but just not, again, it's just not here yet until we're on our feet, which we are nearly on our feet, by the way.
Okay. And sorry, another question from Rashida, who's asking, in each set, bulk buying, is there a comic for each curricular area?
A comic for each curriculum area? You mean like for, in England's term, it's Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3, and so on?
Yeah, in terms of like if you were to bulk buy.
Sorry?
Rashida's asking, you know, if you were to bulk buy, would there be a comic for each curricular area?
Oh, I see. No, they're not split up into that organized a format yet. I was mentioning that we will be bringing out a hardback compilation of the maths and English ones and so on. So that will be more organized in that way. It will tell you the specific areas of the curriculum and so on. The topic guide does that to a degree for you. But no, the comics right now are just a random mix of topics from the overall Key Stage 2 curriculum. So yeah, you'll have it. They'll all be relevant to that curriculum, but they won't be in any particular order. The only thing you can rely on is that there will definitely be 3 maths ones and 3 English ones in each one.
Okay, and finally from Julia, and I wholeheartedly agree with her. These look great. We used to complement the dry learning, say by school, during the homeschooling for both our dyslexic boys, and they just look fantastic. So well done to you, Rossie, for developing such a fantastic product. So thanks.
Guys, I want to say thank you so much for these questions and that lovely feedback just there. And if anyone has any more questions or any feedback on this, on my talk, or on the comics themselves, please by all means send them into the website at the contact or at info@dekkocomics.com, because it's very important that we keep collecting all this feedback all the time. So if you have anything you'd like to say, please do feel free to send it to me.
Okay, thank you. I'll stop. I'll